TPLink 也裁员了，现在市面上都在传说他们的芯片部门。
TP-Link is laying people off too. There are rumors going around that the chip department is cutting staff. People sign contracts in the morning and are out by the evening. I feel like there's a new round of layoffs every week. Am I imagining it?
On June 14th, someone working in IT in Shanghai said that Chinese computer networking technology company TPLink suddenly laid off its entire Wi-Fi chip team at its office in Zhangjiang Hi-Tech Park. According to Chinese tech news outlets, the layoffs happened very fast. In just half a day, employees were notified and went through the full process of leaving the company. TP-Link hasn't explained publicly why it did this. After the news broke on Douyin, a lot of comments mocked the situation or expressed concern. People were saying things like, "How dare you say that? The experts just told us the unemployment rate is going down." Others said, "It's over." One user said this wasn't just a regular round of layoffs. They believed TP-Link was in serious trouble. The company had fired almost all of its tech workers who worked on its overseas business. Since TP-Link mainly targets the US market, and now is under US scrutiny, some think TP-Link might collapse even faster than Huawei did. TP-Link is a well-known brand. It's a major Chinese router company known for cheap prices and fast growth. At one point, it held 45% of the global router market. In the US, TP-Link once controlled 65% of the retail market for Wi-Fi systems and small home routers. Right after Trump was reelected at the end of 2024, word came out that the US government had launched a national security investigation into TP-Link. Officials were also thinking about banning its products from being sold in the US. TP-Link tried to downplay its ties to China. In October 2024, it split its businesses into two companies. TP-Link Systems was put in charge of international operations and is now headquartered in Irvine, California. Its CEO, Jeff Barney, said their routers are made in Vietnam, but industry insiders say the chips and key parts still come from China. Vietnam only does the assembly. Clearly, this move didn't convince the US government. In fact, it raised even more concerns about what the company was really trying to do. On March 5th, Rob Joyce, former director of cybersecurity at the U.S. National Security Agency, told a congressional committee that TP-Link devices could expose users to hacking. He warned that hackers might use these devices to target critical infrastructure. At the same hearing, Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy held up a TP-Link router and advised everyone not to use that device. Then on May 28th, an article on a Chinese tech site revealed that TP-Link might face a $100 million fine and a sales ban in the US. Industry insiders analyzed that since 2019, the United States has actively promoted the Clean Network Initiative, which defines secure end-to-end network communication without using unreliable IT vendors, such as Huawei and ZTE from China. The US sees the Clean Network as the highest security standard, which has since spread to Europe, Asia, and other countries. At the same time, the US targeted Huawei, the world's largest telecom equipment manufacturer. The US not only banned the sale of Huawei products, but also made it difficult for Chinese terminal and telecom equipment manufacturers to acquire chips and other materials. Now, the US has expanded its investigation into communication-related equipment, extending from Huawei's telecom and enterprise communication devices to wireless routers and network equipment for small and medium-sized businesses and consumer brands like TP-Link. The US has been taking aggressive actions against TP-Link, the world's largest consumer network equipment brand. This is the largest investigation since the one targeting Huawei, signaling that the US is willing to bear economic costs to counter the national security risks posed by the Chinese Communist Party. TP-Link has become the next Huawei in the eyes of the US. So far, Chinese electronic products banned or restricted by the US have mainly focused on telecom equipment, surveillance devices, and the associated supply chains. Specifically, products from companies like Huawei, ZTE, Hytera, Hikvision, and Dahua Technology have faced varying degrees of restriction. According to the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, these restrictions include bans on approving new devices for the U.S. market, prohibiting U.S. companies from selling products and technologies to these companies, and preventing U.S. government departments from purchasing their equipment and services. Unless something unexpected happens, TP-Link is expected to be the next product to be banned by the U.S. Additionally, on May 22nd, the FCC voted 4-0 to pass a final rule that bans the use of Chinese laboratory-tested electronic devices deemed a national security risk for the U.S. market, such as smartphones, cameras, and computers. According to Reuters, all electronic devices entering the U.S. must first go through the FCC's equipment certification process. FCC staff estimate that about 75% of electronic products are tested in labs within China. The FCC has found that many of the currently approved labs have deep ties ties to the Chinese Communist Party, including some with links to Chinese state-owned enterprises or the Chinese military. The FCC added that these labs have tested thousands of devices sold in the U.S. market over the years. FCC Chairman Brandon Carr said, "These labs provide a gateway into the U.S. telecommunications infrastructure. It's not hard to imagine that an unreliable lab, one beholden to a foreign adversary, could sign off on insecure gear entering the U.S. market." He added that the FCC is addressing a potential vulnerability in the U.S. national security process to ensure that only trusted labs participate in the testing process. If a lab that tests Huawei or ZTE products is itself unreliable, it is clearly a security risk. The new regulation will specifically prohibit Chinese labs, controlled or influenced by companies on the FCC's covered list, from participating in the testing of electronic devices. This list includes specific communication equipment and services considered to pose a threat to U.S. national security. According to the regulation, once the FCC determines that a lab has connections to a restricted company, its certifications will be revoked. Back in November 2022, the FCC prohibited the approval of telecom and surveillance equipment from Chinese companies like Huawei, ZTE, Hytera, Hikvision, and Dahua Technology, citing that these devices posed unacceptable risks to U.S. national security. Additionally, the FCC is seeking feedback on whether to extend the ban on all Chinese labs and those in other adversarial countries. It is now considering how to encourage the establishment of more labs and testing facilities within the U.S. The FCC also introduced another proposal. It requires entities with significant ties to the Chinese Communist Party or other adversarial nations to fully disclose all FCC licenses and authorizations they hold, including for broadcasting, equipment certification, and undersea cables. Chairman Brendan Carr said this proposal was designed based on a legislative model. The U.S. government and the FCC's strong actions have clearly impacted high-tech Chinese companies and related businesses, with reports of sudden layoffs. On the morning of April 8, 2025, Microsoft's largest Chinese outsource partner, Micro Innovation Software, suddenly dismantled its entire Shanghai project team, with 2,000 engineers having their fingerprints deactivated and access frozen. At 8 a.m. that day, 37-year-old algorithm engineer Chen Mo found that his work card had suddenly stopped working, and instead of his daily work list, a layoff email appeared on the screen. The office area was in chaos. Some people frantically backed up their code, which was blocked by the system, while others found their 10 years of work logs wiped out with just one click. According to employees, Microsoft had already requested all of its outsourcing teams in China to disconnect from servers within China by 2024. Recently, Chinese employees at Microsoft's Seattle office posted about their struggles, saying that they had been laid off, and if they couldn't find a job within 60 days, they would lose their legal residency status. These employees had been relocated to Seattle after the closure of Microsoft's Suzhou campus in 2024. However, most of these Chinese employees do not plan to return to China. The majority choose to continue their journey abroad. After being laid off, they only go back to China to visit family, because they no longer want to endure the high-pressure work culture in China. Another Microsoft employee mentioned that they thought the layoffs would end in May, but to their surprise, they continued into June. This time, the layoffs targeted Microsoft's MVP leader for China and the head of Reactor Shanghai, among others. This employee believes that Microsoft will focus heavily on developing in Malaysia in the future, and the company has already started stockpiling chips there. China's AI labs are expected to close, and all employees should prepare for Microsoft's complete exit from mainland China. In addition to Microsoft, another American tech giant, Intel, has recently been reported to be planning massive layoffs. Reports claim that Intel's China division will start layoffs in July, particularly impacting the client computing group. The expected layoff rate is 20%. And some teams will experience even higher cuts. In a memo to factory employees, Intel executives wrote, "We've been taking action to create a more streamlined, agile, engineering-driven Intel Foundry to win the trust of our customers." Intel Foundry is the company's manufacturing division. The executives added, "These decisions are extremely difficult, but they are necessary to help Intel achieve a more competitive market position and lay a strong foundation for the company's future." Intel declined to comment on its layoff plans, but in a statement it said it was working to become a faster and more efficient organization. Also, in April of this year, media reported that Japanese battery giant Maxell Limited announced a major business adjustment. The company will stop producing prismatic lithium-ion batteries and will dissolve its Chinese subsidiary Wuxi Maxell Energy Company, which was responsible for that business. Founded in 1960, Maxell was the first company in Japan to develop and produce alkaline batteries, floppy disks, and other products. In 1964, it became a subsidiary of the Hitachi Group and later developed the Maxell brand based on its original product, the maximum capacity dry cell. As a well-established energy and electronics company, Maxell began its lithium-ion battery operations in 1996. Early on, it gained a significant position in the mobile device market with prismatic lithium batteries, which were used in mobile phones, smartphones, and handheld gaming consoles. Wuxi Maxell Energy Company was established in March 1996 as a wholly owned subsidiary of Maxell. Located in the Xinwu district of Wuxi, Jiangsu Province, the company has a registered capital of $18 million. In 2011, Maxell split into two companies, one focused on battery and new energy businesses, and the other focused on expanding its global market presence. Maxell's decision to stop producing prismatic batteries and dissolve Wuxi Maxell Energy Company is primarily due to market competition pressures and a shift in direction. With increasing competition in the lithium battery industry, the profitability of Maxell's lithium battery business continued to decline. To adjust its strategic layout and build competitive advantages, Maxell will now focus on next-generation battery technology, namely solid-state batteries. Sources say Maxell has selected a factory site in Kyoto Prefecture as a candidate location for its new production line, where it plans to mass-produce cylindrical batteries with a diameter of approximately 23 millimeters and a height of about 27 millimeters. Some have pointed out that Wuxi Maxell, with its long history and vast land area, had superior conditions for production. For Maxell to give up its mature production line and build a new factory in Kyoto Prefecture is seen as directly related to anti-Japanese incidents that happened in China last year. Since then, Japanese businesses have been determined to pull out of China. With the escalation of the US-China trade war and tariff issues, Japanese companies have only strengthened their resolve to leave China more quickly. Since 2020, China's economy has been on a downward spiral. The further deterioration of US-China relations has compounded the damage. Some Chinese netizens have remarked that while the layoff storm at Citigroup has yet to subside, Shanghai is now witnessing large-scale layoffs at billion-dollar companies. Netizens have revealed that Shanghai Junhe Group started delaying employee salaries from the end of 2024, with payments only made at the end of the month. In June 2025, the company began notifying employees of layoffs and required them to cooperate with the termination process in order to receive their May salaries and have May's Social Security payments made. No severance compensation was offered. Even more outrageous, the company reneged on a promise to pay 20% of remaining wages for 2024 by the end of the year, and it looks like the remaining 20% for 2025 will not be paid either. Many have already complained to labor authorities, but as employees, the path to defending their rights is challenging. A netizen provided a company-wide notice with the following key points. 1. For employees who cooperate with the termination process, the company will pay all overdue monthly wages, Social Security, Housing Fund, and unpaid reimbursement up till May 31, 2025. The payment will be made in one lump sum, and no further payments will be owed. 2. For those who refuse to leave or have not been reassigned, the company will stop paying wages and stop contributing to Social Security and housing funds. In other words, even basic living expenses will not be paid. 3. The notice did not mention any labor compensation issues. Public information shows that Junhe Group is headquartered in Shanghai's Lujiazhui, the financial, trade, and logistics hub of China's economy. The group has a registered capital of 13 billion yuan, employs over 5,000 people across various sectors, including large-scale trade, financial services, industrial investment, risk control, and compliance. Its total assets exceed 100 billion yuan. On October 12, 2024, Junhe Group was ranked 66th on the list of China's top 500 private enterprises for the year. One netizen remarked that for such a powerful company to suddenly collapse and resort to such drastic layoff measures is shocking. According to the leaked notice, the reason for the layoffs is a financial chain problem, although the exact issue remains unknown. Another netizen pointed out that foreign companies are different from foreign invested or state-owned companies. Foreign companies usually have the budget to cover layoffs, while private companies that go bankrupt don't have the funds to compensate employees and may even be heavily in debt. Another netizen commented that it's not just foreign companies fleeing or private enterprises closing down. Even top-tier professions, like executives at publicly listed banks, are facing severe salary cuts and layoffs. Reports indicate that nearly 80% of senior executives in China's banking sectors saw salary cuts in 2024, with some reductions reaching as high as 82.4%. Analysts suggest that the trend of US-China decoupling is unstoppable. With the overall economy shrinking, no industry seems immune. China's technology industry, for example, has almost been cut off from livelihood in the US, as the United States works to completely eliminate Chinese components from its supply chains. In this context, the sudden layoff of all technical staff in TP-Link's core business is shocking. As the world's top Wi-Fi product supplier for 11 consecutive years, it raises questions. Industry insiders speculate that losing the US market might force TP-Link to abandon its router business. However, routers are TP-Link's main product, and it's hard to imagine how the company will survive if it suddenly gives up its core business. But one positive signal can be seen in this event. It seems that TP-Link has already been abandoned by the Chinese Communist Party. Although the US views TP-Link as the next Huawei, the CCP doesn't seem to plan on subsidizing or supporting it, leaving the company to fend for itself. There are rumors that the CCP leader has lost power, and a leadership change could happen at any time. If the successor is willing to abandon the current leadership's hostile policies towards the US and shift to full disengagement with the US, it could change the country's economic policies. For companies like TP-Link that rely on subsidies to capture market share, this would mean reduced investment. Without subsidies, TP-Link will struggle to maintain its low price dumping strategy. Another possibility is that TP-Link may have been purged within the CCP's internal power struggle, and thus no longer receives financial support. The latest reports indicate that Xi Jinping, who is seen as a puppet leader, has recently visited central China. While he continued his money-splashing efforts to maintain the CCP's image, the 1.5 billion yuan spent on this visit pales in comparison to the previous 26 billion yuan. The CCP is now desperately short on funds, and has little interest in supporting TP-Link. Even China's so-called top tech companies can't escape the fate of private enterprises, and their collapse can happen overnight.